It's sharp 2 p.m. Malaysia time. And I think without any further delay, Dr. Halim, I think we can start. A very good afternoon, everyone. And I'm glad to see many familiar names over here. Today is our webinar. It's our number 6 in the series. It's titled Disaster Planning and Response. I'm Dr. Jasima, and I will be your MC for the event today. I'm currently the Occupational Health Advisor with Petronas and also a public health medicine specialist. And together with me, we have Dr. Halim Mohamed, all the way from The Hague, Netherlands, joining us today. I was told it's 8 a.m. now, right, Dr. Halim, over there?
Yes, it is. Thank you,
Yes,
Dr.
and
Jasmine.
together with us, Dr. Halim, we have participants from many countries over here. I was just scrolling down the list, and more to join. Actually, we can see the numbers increasing shortly. And I would like to quickly introduce our speaker for the day. For those of you who have been in the field of occupational medicine, uh, Dr. Halim is a name very, very familiar. I know Dr. Halim. I remember Dr. Halim's name as a personality in the field as long as I've been practicing in occupational health. That's been pretty long, actually. Uh, Dr. Halim is one of the occupational health leaders globally. He has international experience in designing and implementing health programs across complex energy sector operations. He is currently serving as Regional Health Manager for EMEA with Shell International, overseeing health programs across Shell operations in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. He currently leads 6 multidisciplinary teams focused on health risk management, emergency preparedness, and operational health excellence. And one of his forte is integrating occupational health, industrial hygiene, and human factors into Shell's global health energy to support the company's commitment to safety, innovation, and sustainable performance. Previously, Dr. Halim has served in the Malaysian Armed Forces. I just found that out today, Doctor. For more than 11 years before joining the oil and gas industry, specifically with the Navy. And together with Dr. Abu Hassan, Dr. Halim has co-authored the chapter on medical disaster planning and response, textbook of occupational medicine practice, the 5th and also the previous 4th edition. Currently, we were told that they are working on the 6th edition with the likes of Prof. Kojimori from University of Occupational and Environmental Health, Kitakyushu, Japan. And I can go on, but I would like not to steal the limelight and time from Dr. Halim. Allow me to quickly walk everyone through the agenda for the day for the next 1 hour. If we can go to the next one. Yeah, before that, Sherry or Shakira, can you please show the home rules, ground rules, please? Yeah, okay. So this is a live event. So everyone, your mics will be muted. We will do that from our end. And please do stay focused during the session. You can drop your questions at the chat box. We are not going to take any live questions. And throughout the event, we hope and would like to request everyone to stay professional and respectful to each other in the chat or whatever discussion that we are having. And do not share any confidential information in the chat column. And for your information as well, the session with permission will be recorded and we will be sharing it later in our ACOH 2026 website. I will be walking you through about that later. And next one, please. We can now look quickly at the agenda. So Dr. Halim will be presenting his paper for roughly 35 to 40 minutes. And following that, we will go through the Q&A. And finally, we will wrap up the session with a quick promotion on ACOH 2026. So without any further delay, let us all welcome Dr. Halim with his presentation on disaster planning and response through virtual applause, maybe. Over to you, Dr. Halim.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jasima, for that very kind introduction. It is a real pleasure to be here with everyone today. I see many old friends, so it feels like coming home. Um, so I'd like to share today the practical aspects of disaster planning and response. Let me share my screen.
Yes, we can see the screen, Dr. Halim.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, so before I start, can I just check with everyone who has been involved in disaster planning and response before or are currently involved? If you can just type a quick yes on the chat, it'd be great for me to know. Excellent, thank you. Oh, excellent. Okay, so we've got a few. Right. Thank you. Now, the reason is that disaster planning and response is not a straightforward subject, and I am still very much a student of this. So if I've missed anything important, please comment at the end of the presentation and help add to the knowledge. So first of all, I'd also like to make a disclaimer. I work for Shell, but this presentation is not done on behalf of the company. The views that I share in this presentation is mine. So, what are disasters? They are incidents that impact whole communities beyond the community's ability to cope with their current resources. And this then results in extensive harm to people, assets, and environment. So these disasters could be natural or could be man-made. Natural like earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and man-made like plant explosion, massive chemical spill, or a war. So during a disaster, we have three goals. One, to reduce harm to workers. Two, to maintain business continuity. And third, to support the public. But this can be difficult to achieve because one, the public resources and facilities are often overwhelmed, like the hospitals might not work. And the other thing is that the risks and hazards are often ongoing whilst people are trying to respond. So I'll talk more about the challenges in the case studies, which we'll go through to illustrate the challenges. And then we'll also talk about how we achieve the goals by what we do before, during, and after the disaster. So in 1984, a petrochemical plant in Bhopal, which at that time was producing pesticides, accidentally released 30 tons of methyl isocyanate. Now, methyl isocyanate is the chemical intermediate that they use to make that pesticide. It is a respiratory irritant that can cause pulmonary edema and respiratory failure. So the incident occurred in the middle of the night. There were in the city of Bhopal, there was around half a million residents, and the people surrounding that area had no knowledge of evacuation plans or evacuation procedures. So the evacuation did not happen well. As a result, within the next weeks and months, 3,800 people died, mostly from respiratory failure. The number doubled, a few years later. In 1986, the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl power plant overheated and led to a few explosions and a big fire. Now, the Soviet authorities at that time downplayed the seriousness and continued to send emergency workers to the very highly irradiated area, which was also on fire at that time, in order to control the fire. So as a result, 31 rescue workers died. And 20 years later, 6,000 thyroid cancers were attributed to this incident. In 2005, BP's Texas City refinery in Galveston, Texas, accidentally released hydrocarbon, which ignited and caused a huge explosion. It killed 15 people on site. But what's interesting was that there were two health-related contributing factors. One was fatigue. The control room workers were too tired to make good decisions during a crisis. And number two was there were some weaknesses in the human factors in plant design. For example, the worker would need, in an overpressure situation, one worker would need to close a valve on the first floor and then go up to the second floor, look at the gauges, and then go back to the first floor to adjust the valve again. So not very good design that would be reliable during crisis or during emergencies. Now, here we have Deepwater Horizon. So in 2010, this we all know this very well. Deepwater Horizon drilling platform exploded, killed 11 workers and injuring another 16, and resulted in the second largest oil spill in history. Now, what's interesting is that 48,000 workers worked to clean up, and of these, 108 of those cleanup workers had harmful exposure to either crude oil or the chemical dispersant. The year after that, in 2011, a tsunami hit Fukushima nuclear power plant, damaging its cooling system, causing the reactor to overheat and melt down, and causing 2 explosions. Now, there were no fatalities from this incident. They had 16 workers who were injured. However, although no one was killed in the blast itself, they needed to evacuate 800 patients from the hospital on the first day, on the first day of evacuation. But out of the 800 people whom they evacuated from the hospital, 50 died during the evacuation. Most of these were elderly patients. They died either from hypothermia, dehydration, or worsening of their underlying medical condition. But the Japanese, they are very good at disasters and they learn very quickly. So on the next 2 days of evacuation, they managed to evacuate over 500 patients without any fatalities, or without anyone died during the evacuation exercise. So fast forward to 2022, a month after I moved into my current role, the Russia-Ukraine war started, and Shell employs 1,500 people in Ukraine, in various parts of Ukraine, including the eastern part, and we needed to evacuate most of them to Poland and to the Netherlands. Now, some of them opted to stay back despite the danger. Now, fortunately, we had no casualties and public hospitals in Ukraine continued to function well. I'll talk more about the challenges later. Now, 1 year later, we saw 2 earthquakes in 2023 in Turkey, resulting in 53,000 civilian deaths. Again, we were lucky. None of our 500 employees and 1,000 plus contractors died or were injured, but many had families who are either injured or have died or have lost their homes. And a year later, in 2024, we saw hurricane. Last year, we saw Hurricane Halim hit southeastern United States, resulting in 252 deaths. We had to shut down our Gulf of Mexico production operations for about a week. But again, no fatalities and no injuries. But what happened was that we were able to look at this and learn from our responses. What were the practicalities and what could we have done better? And what we did was to put together a guide for our health managers, taking from lessons learned, and it outlines what a health advisor or a health manager or an HSC person, who are supporting the company. It outlines what we need to do before, during, and after a disaster. So the best way to manage a disaster is not to have one in the first place. Now, from a health perspective, there are 2 avoidable health hazards. As I mentioned, one is fatigue, and this is controlled through fatigue risk management plan. And second is looking at the human factors, looking at human factors review during plant design or human factors in operations. Now, these are big topics, so I'm not going to go through it today. Today, we're going to talk about its preparations. Now, the second best way to manage a disaster is to be prepared for it, of course. And in general, these are managed to 2 different plans. Now, companies will call these different names, but generally it's a 2-tier plan. One is for emergencies and the other one is for significant disasters. As mentioned, emergencies are local, that affects the work site, where we have adequate resources to manage it. This is like, someone having a heart attack in a remote location, or a small fire that breaks out, causing some people with burns, or a minor leak. And this is managed through an emergency response plan. And our job as health advisors to the organization is to verify that the medical emergency response plan is fit for purpose. It meets the standards that it's supposed to meet. Now, the next part is significant disasters, and these are managed through uh, organizations give it different names. Some people call it a disaster plan. Some organizations call it a business continuity plan, and some call it a crisis management plan. But basically, these are for disasters where that impacts communities and where it is beyond our ability to control it with the resources that we have, and will also affect the community's ability to manage it. So, let's talk first about the medical emergency response plan because it forms the basis before we go to the disaster plan. Many countries would have regulations or guidelines that specify normally a ratio between workers and first aiders, like two first aiders for every 150 workers, or one nurse for every 400 workers. Now, this is good. We need to comply with this. But I'd like to highlight that ratios doesn't take into account time, which is a key element in medical emergency response, and therefore a key element in medical emergency response planning. So that is why the oil and gas industry adopt a time-based tiered response model. So this means that comply with the ratio, but we still need to ensure that we have the resources and procedures available that guarantees first aid and defibrillation within 3 to 5 minutes of any incident. That's called tier 1. Stabilization by a medical professional within 20 minutes to 1 hour. That's tier 2, and it includes ambulance and medical equipment. And tier 3, hospital treatment within 3 to 4 hours, and that includes where necessary medevac or transport. So the medical emergency response plan need to specify or explain how this is met. This is very good publication. It's free. It's downloadable from IOGP. I use it often. Now, the medical emergency response also need to specify drills. And in my experience, the best drills are not standalone, where we medical people interact with each other, but rather one that are integrated with the bigger workplace scenarios like a fire, chemical release, etc., where the different players from different departments would come and interact and run the drills together, whether it's the fire department or logistics, etc. It is also necessary to involve local hospitals in our drills, and also to measure response times of all the parties involved. The common gaps that we saw in Shell is that sometimes in some places, casualty management zones have not been correctly identified or have not been pre-identified during the drills. Rescue workers sometimes don't know where to find their PPE, or sometimes the PPE wasn't the correct ones that was for the specific incident. And we also found that in drills, the external ambulance may get lost in the plant. They don't know how to navigate to wherever because they're not used to it. So drills help us smooth out those problems and learn from those lessons. Now, most country regulations also specify for industries that are at risk of disasters to, one, notify the authorities, to submit their risk assessment, submit their emergency response plan, provide information to the public, and also name a competent person who then owns or verify, develop, and owns the crisis management plan or the business continuity plan. Our role as health advisors is to support the competent person and ask, do you have everything you need from a health perspective to make your disaster plan complete and correct? So we don't want it to miss the health elements. Okay, So we've got all the plans ready, but what if a disaster happens, right? Hopefully it doesn't, but if it happens, what is our role then? Um, Based on our experience, the first thing health advisor need to do is to do a rapid needs assessment, preferably within 72 hours of the disaster. So the goal here is to identify what are the mitigations that are in place that we're managing, what are the needs of the employees and perhaps their family and public as well, and what is not in place. Um, what are the things that we do not have the resources for, or the public facilities and even NGOs do not have the resources for. Our role is to identify those gaps and try to mitigate it. That will, it could be transport for medical evacuation, maybe access to treatment outside the country. Now, this may not apply so much for the countries that we're in, but there are some countries that I work in where this is a definite necessity. Sometimes mental health support, etc. We'll talk more about those needs later. But identifying the gap then allow us to then determine what specific health actions need to be pursued and in what order of priority, and also be able to specify who needs to do what and when and how. And we usually develop this by within 120 hours. Um, so, yeah, just a few days. So we need to be quick with this. Um, and I just also would like to highlight the only health person on the ground often is the health advisor or the health manager, and therefore he or she have a very important role uh, because the emergency response coordinator is not only busy, they're not thinking about health so much. That's our experience. So we need to engage and reach out very quickly. Otherwise, the health controls can be missed. Now, again, the disaster health plan is best done collaboratively with the other departments like HR, logistics, contracts, and procurement. And it has to be done, not only it has to be done together, it has to be approved and supported by the leadership, because it is also the whole crisis management team that will be monitoring and also helping out to make sure that the health plan progress. So now, okay. So let's talk about post-disaster. First of all, there's no clear line like when the acute phase end and when is it called post-disaster. There's no real line. But for me personally, I just use, when did the crisis management team disband? When did they, no longer stay in that room and they go home, right? Now, what we found in Ukraine, Turkey, and the US is that mental health impact is very substantial. And we had many cases where people reported non-specific symptoms as well as early indications of depression and anxiety. Now, this is not too surprising because there's a vast body of evidence that shows that people who survive disasters have a very high likelihood of psychiatric disorders. So, for example, that picture is Piper Alpha in the North Sea of UK that caught fire in 1988. Can't remember how many people died. But the survivors had 73%, or 73% of the survivors suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, right? So what we found helpful is to immediately signpost employees to employee assistance program, even though they are not survivors of the disaster, even though they are just learn about the disaster and they were not there. We quickly signpost them to employee assistance program. And the other thing that we found useful is to deploy a psychologist to uniquely look at the group on site. We either deploy the psychologist physically on site or provide a virtual access, or a combination. The other thing we have found useful is to train the line managers. Now, the line managers are the people closest to their people. So health people cannot be around all the time or everywhere, but the line managers could represent a good example of how to manage people who might need help, need mental health support, whether it's to be a listening ear or whether to be able to advise where to go to, what to do, etc. So this has been very helpful. In some situations, we also help the employees directly with certain training, but we find that training for line managers is more helpful and useful. It's more impactful. Okay, so lastly, now, okay, before you shout at me, I agree. As doctors, it is not our job to speak with the media. This is best done by the company spokesperson or the business leader. We do, however, have a role in providing our business leader, whether it's our general manager, etc., or the company spokesperson, with facts and figures. And this is what the media wants to know. This is what they are hungry for. They want to share with the public the human aspects of this disaster. Um, so we provide them with facts and figures. But what I've learned is that we sometimes forget that we have a secondary role in educating the public. We have a role in using the media to inform the public about the health impacts or the potential health impacts, the preventive measures, maybe impending hazards, how to safely evacuate, for example, and where to find shelters, and what are the good practices for public health. Like for example, in Turkey and in the US, we were able to help a lot of people in informing them about sanitation, clean water, etc., and basically, pointing them to the right direction as well. Um, Now, we have found that when we educate the media, they can work for us. They can help us a lot in a disaster rather than being our rather than being hard on us. Okay, so in summary, disasters, whether natural or man-made, can cause extensive harm to people, assets, and the environment. And as health people supporting the organization, the industry, the workers, there are things that we can do before, during, and after the disaster. Now, um, I've made this presentation to be more practical, but certainly there are other ways to look at disasters, let's say from a regulatory perspective or from an academic perspective. So if you'd like to learn more, I can recommend these 3 recommendations. The IOGP Medical Emergency Response is a really good publication. It's free, that sets the standards for oil and gas industry on the time-based tiered response. McIntyre is the textbook on disaster response, very big. And David Coe's Occupational Medicine Practice provides an academic perspective, and there is a good chapter in there on disasters. So I hope none of us would ever see a disaster, but if we do, I hope what I've shared could be of some use. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Jasima.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Halim, for the very, very practical explanation and approach on disaster planning and response. I have many questions lined up here, and participants, I think this is our time to ask many practical questions, I believe, with Dr. Halim regarding disaster planning, disaster management, and also disaster response. I believe Dr. Halim has structurally categorized each phase before, what to be done before, what to be done during, and also what to be done after a disaster. So right now, I will keep this Q&A a bit lengthy, Dr. Halim. We have another Dr. Halim. Dr. Halim, on the chat, you can post your questions over there. We are not taking any live questions, but you can type it out in the chat, and we will be taking it. Um, all right, okay. Maybe I'll take one first, yeah, Dr. Halim, from Mr. Dr. Surendran. How does a mass casualty management plan differ from a disaster health plan in terms of preparation? So that's our first question, Dr. Halim. Over to you.
Mm. Thank you. That's a really good question. Um, I think different companies can manage it differently, but in my personal view, it should be one plan because a disaster always has the potential to create mass casualties. And I think it will be a mistake if an organization has a disaster plan that it, for example, involves a plant explosion, but within that plan, there is no mass casualty aspect for it. So in my view, it should be integrated. The mass casualty management, I would say, is an element in the overall disaster plan, for a specific scenario.
All right. Dr. Halim, please correct me. Like in certain companies or organizations, there's a overall emergency response plan. That's the bigger one.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then we have the medical emergency response plan within or as a supporting document.
Correct.
And also within that MERP, there's one section subsection on mass casualty incident management. So that is,
Yes.
yes. So it is not something that is separate from the overall medical emergency response, but it's like a sort of a subset of it, where they may have their own definitions on what does it mean as a mass casualty, and how many cases
Mm.
do you define as critical, how many do you define as non-critical. Am I right, doctor?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. If I may add, Dr. Jasima, the model that I've given is that for emergencies, which we have resources for, we call it emergency response plan.
Yeah.
And then where our resources are overwhelmed, like in a disaster, then it's a disaster plan. Now, I know
Yeah.
that some companies also combine the two. That works as well. But I think what we need to know is that, in our day-to-day situation, every year, typically we'd have probably, I don't know, less than 5 incidents, depending on the size of the company, less than 5 emergency incidents. Somebody gets a heart attack at a workplace, right?
Mm.
Ambulance needs to, first aider needs to do their job, ambulance needs to come. But these are all within.
Yeah.
And the drills also tend to be, small. But the next step is when we are overwhelmed, and this is where we talk about mass casualty. And this is where um, we need to prepare for something that we don't normally prepare for, or we don't normally see, because now we need to collaborate with government agencies. We need to collaborate with a local hospital. Things becomes quite complex. So that's why I've separated the two.
All right. Okay, the next question is from Dr. Faisal, and the question is, how frequent should the medical emergency response plan be tested?
Ooh, good one. Yeah, how often should it be tested? Um, There is no specific regulation or guideline because it all depends on the setting, on the company, and on the size, and on the complexity, and on the risk. But in general, if we have a plant that has major accident hazard, let's say a refinery, or something similar to that, what the industry normally does is that they will do one at least one integrated medical emergency response drill where they test a scenario, let's say for example a fire, etc., that involve emergency within our resources, and they would test as a drill a disaster plan once every 3 years. Now this is again variable, and this is what I have observed. It is not carved in stone.
Mm, 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 mm,
Yeah, but the point is that for the emergencies where our resources are not overwhelmed, for
mm.
those scenarios, it's easier to run those drills. It's just within the company.
All right. I think Yeah, doctor. There's one more follow-up question related to that. So I still
Mm.
on the drill aspect. Colonel Dr. Siti Salmia has asked this. I believe you have also shared earlier. The question is, will there be in any situation that an emergency response will end up needing cooperation from government agencies? And how will be your SOPs on this? It differs from country to country, yes. Maybe we can have the principles and approach from you, Dr. Halim. Yeah,
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. I think so. First of all, the emergency response plan, even for non-disaster situations, often will need cooperation from at least the public hospital. And depending on your medical emergency response setup, you might do tier one in-house, but then you require the nearby hospitals to send their ambulance and staff. So therefore, that collaboration and cooperation may be needed even for a limited case. Let's say, for example, a heart attack in a plant. That collaboration is already needed because you can imagine you need the ambulance to come in and know its way around and know
yeah,
what are the do's and don'ts in a plant. Yeah. So even at that level, it is needed. Now, certainly for bigger disasters, you need cooperation from government agencies. For example, the hospitals, public health, uh, and I think DOSH needs to just know, or the depending on the country, the occupational and safety um, organization or will need to know, or administration need to know, need to be kept up to date during the emergencies, and they can also help provide resources during that. Um, so is the cooperation and collaboration number one is vital.
yeah.
And number two, I would say that it needs to be established before a disaster happens.
Exactly, exactly. Just to share over here, Dr. Halim, like in Malaysia and also with all the
Mm,
participants, like we have our National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, and there
yeah.
are certain protocols and SOPs
Yes.
stringently to be followed when there is a disaster, including industrial disaster.
Yes.
And at every state, there is actually a disaster management, committee that
Yeah.
oversees all this. That is a multi-agency. So if there is an industrial area or company, so everyone will be falling under this committee to coordinate and also to collaborate
Correct.
or to prepare and organize such drills. So that is actually a practice over here in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And yeah, like what you rightly mentioned for ambulances, the ingress route, the egress route, how do they come in,
Correct.
how do they
Yeah.
go out, where is the medical standby? So all that has to be prepared and coordinated during the before the disaster stage. So the before the disaster stage, it's not only like 1 2 weeks before the disaster or something. You can't expect a disaster. So all
Yeah.
the preparedness has to be there, and it is definitely a multi agency coordination and collaboration that is very much needed, including which is the nearest clinic, which is the nearest hospital, where to send to, what kind of trauma or injury, which hospital has the certain kind of specialty and all that. I think it's very, very important for occupational health advisors to be aware and also, to have that rightly documented because people change. But when you have
Yeah.
it rightly documented, that will be our reference and guide. And related to that, when we are talking about agencies and authorities and so on, right? Dr. Abu Hassan has asked this one question. Drills are hardly heard of or being done, especially within the public sector. How do we address this issue? What's your opinion, Doctor?
That's a good one. Just to take a step back, Dr. Jasima, I think we are very lucky. You are very lucky in Malaysia because we have SIMA,
Yes.
the Control of Industrial and Major Accident Hazards Act, which then require
Yeah.
the industry to do those tasks of notifying of emergency response plan would be looked at by NATMA, etc. So in other words, we are forced to collaborate through the regulation. But not all countries have this, and whether the country has it or not, the right thing to do is to actually have prepare for disasters anyway and collaborate. So back to that question by Dr. Abu. So can you repeat that again? Sorry,
Yeah.
I've
The
lost my
question
train of
is,
thought.
yeah, sorry. The question is about drills being organized within the public
Yes,
sector. How do we address
yes,
this issue? Yeah.
indeed. Um, and this is not unique in Malaysia. I think I find that in every country that I've supported, whether developed, highly developed or not, um, the public sectors, they are busy with a lot of things. The hospitals, they are busy with the things that they need to do. They need to save lives day to day, right? So they don't have, they don't come to us and say, hey, look, what does I do? Let's go do this. So it is incumbent upon the health advisors or the industries to reach out and say, hey, look, I'm a bit concerned because that we have major accident hazard. Um, we're trying to prepare for a disaster. Would you like to be involved? So reach out to the hospitals, reach out to the different authorities. Um, and what I find is that in most cases, the vast majority of cases, um, the hospitals would be very happy, or the ministries would be very happy to be involved in the drill because it's a learning experience for them as well. So, um, so the responses has been positive, but it's often I feel the responsibility of the health advisor
Yes.
for the
Yep.
organization to reach out. For the
Exactly.
organization, meaning us, working for
Yep.
the
Yep.
corporate health advisors, etc., to reach out. So we are like a bridge that links our uh, emergency response coordinator, who's usually a safety guy, doesn't know much about health uh,
Yep. Yep.
often, and the public organizations, right? So we are the bridge.
Exactly. I think it is you have rightly mentioned that we have to be the one initiating, and we have to put ourselves out and tell to the authorities, hey, look, we are here, and we are planning this, we are being prepared, and we need your support and collaboration. In our experience also over here in Malaysia, doctor, I think we never had any issues with that. It has been always a two-way working mechanism, and I believe any organization in any countries also, it is very, very important to understand how can you work together and be prepared, particularly for industrial disaster, because unlike any other disaster, industrial disasters can be different. For example, like chemical hazards and exposures or radiation, you may already have that list of exposures or hazards
Mm.
that potentially can escalate or lead to a disaster. So we have to understand the nature and also the specific um, how to say elements for an industrial
Okay.
disaster. We have more questions since we have time. Will that be okay, doctor?
Of course, yes.
All right.
Happy with
Okay.
that.
So, yeah. Okay. So, Dr. Abu also posted a few questions. I'll be taking one by one. So the next question from Dr. Abu is, in Malaysia, under OSHA 1994, that Occupational Safety and Health Act 1994, that was amended recently in 2022, there's a requirement where all workplaces or employers are required to set up their own uh, emergency response plan, which also comes with the ERT and so on. This may not be an issue with the big organizations or multinational companies, but it can be a real challenge to the small and medium industries. And how and what can we do to assist them in meeting this requirement? Any suggestions,
Yeah,
doctor?
yeah, certainly. So first of all, um, you know, there is no doubt that all workplaces need a plan to manage emergencies. Um, so there are two parts of developing the plan. One is the expertise to, someone to be able to say, okay, this is our plan, right? It's basically to figure out and design the plan. Second is the resources. What are the resources we need to in order for this plan to work? First aider within 2 to 3 minutes, right? How do we do it? We train people. We buy defibrillators, put it in places where it can reach the patient in 2 minutes, etc. So it's about figuring that out. Now, um, for SMEs, often uh, they would they would ensure or they would have their own resources for first aid. But when it comes to tier two, often they will rely from the public services, um, or they would use third-party providers like ambulance providers, etc. So um, I think it is more about spending time to think through what will I do in an emergency response. And it doesn't need to be ownership or spending lots of money on having your own ambulance or employing your own emergency nurse, etc. It doesn't need to be like that. So in a sense, I feel that um, it may feel overwhelming for SMEs, but it doesn't need to be.
All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for that comments and suggestion, Doctor. Just now, there was something mentioned on business continuity plan with
Mm.
regards to disasters, right? So, yeah, can you, Dr. Hassan's question is, can you elaborate further on this BCP? Yes.
Yeah, indeed. I didn't mention business continuity plan. I only touched on it.
Yeah.
Um, so the business continuity plan is a bigger plan that the business develop to ensure the business and it has so many components to it, from logistics to managing the media to HR, calling employees out, finding out who's where at what time. So it's a huge, humongous plan. And certainly, I'm very happy that I'm not in charge of it. We as the health minister. But what we need to ensure, but I think in short, what we need to know, it is a bigger plan uh, that is pursued or is run as a process by the crisis management team when the time comes. Our role is the medical aspect of it. We just need to ensure that the medical aspect of it, of that business continuity plan, runs well. So I think that's as far as I
Yeah.
can go. However, um, if you happen to find yourself being more and more involved, it is worth for the health advisor to be trained in so they are training for this. So some big companies have training for this because once you get into the crisis management team or the emergency response coordination area, they sit in the control room and or in the emergency center and they speak a different language and they have process and procedures, and being trained and being part of that and then knowing and then reviewing the business continuity plan or the emergency response plan from the business perspective could be useful.
Yep.
But I think it's a big topic on its own.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I think
So,
for our audience and for me,
yeah,
we can stick and focus on the health element
disaster.
of the BCP which we contribute to.
All right. So maybe we can have another one more session next year on BCP and crisis management. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crisis management team is huge in a company or in an organization. And then we as health advisors, we come in terms of the medical expert advisory or medical emergency response planning
Mm.
within that crisis. But to play that role, it is vital for us to understand the whole big picture. And that's what the specific trainings that you're mentioning about, right, Dr. Halim? You need to
Yeah.
understand the bigger picture first to understand where you fit in within that big puzzle. All right. So I have another very important and relevant question from Dr. Yan. I still have a bit of time, so I can
Sure.
take Dr. Yeah, so because we are learning through this Q&A, usually that's how our
Yes.
webinar also works. So Dr. Halim, I think Dr. Yan, a colleague from MISC, he has posted this question. So when there is a disaster, there's involvement of multiple agencies. It can be military, it can be medical, public health, civil defense, and so on. And then you have too many heads there. I'm trying to sum up his question. How
Yep.
do you handle, or how do a medical advisor handle conflict in command, especially in terms of hierarchy or the differing intelligence conflicts. How do we manage? Sometimes there's the authorities come in and they have the medical commander and we are representing the company. So how do we navigate in this kind of situation?
Yeah, this is an amazing question. Actually, it's really, really good. In short, I would say identify it before it happens.
Yeah.
So you have drills with them. So as we spoke before, as health advisors, if we are near a military installation, then it's very clear that their resources is going to help us. So it's a good idea to reach out to them earlier on and just then agree first or co-create together the medical emergency response plan, because the reality is that your medical emergency response plan will need to take them into account, and their response plan, their emergency response plan will need to take into account your disaster. Uh, um, and therefore, earlier on, we can co-create together. They can look at ours, we can look at theirs, and then we can say, oh, maybe we need to tweak here and tweak there in this situation. So basically, the conflicts can be identified early and worked out.
Right.
Not always the case. We saw this problem in the US in Hurricane Helene. But in general, right, as in in the industry, um, we are at the lower level of the hierarchy when it comes to command, right? So I think that's I think there's not much you can do other than during a disaster, establishing collaboration and rules of engagement during a disaster is, I think, almost impossible. What you can do is to um, exploit is the wrong word. What you can do is to leverage
Yeah.
on your existing relationship that you already have with the military, with the civil defense, public health organizations, etc.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I think that's a very brilliant opinion. Especially how are you going to manage this,
Mm,
multiple experts coming in, and how are you going to navigate this difficult situation? Now, there's another important aspect that you rightfully highlighted, the management of mental well-being. Dr. Yan has this question, and I also have this question. Maybe I can combine these two in one question. So, when there is a crisis or there is a disaster, let me put it rightly. When there is a disaster, there's always, management of mental well-being of those affected or those within the, facility. We call it like post-crisis PTSD
mm,
management or mental well-being support and all that. That's for the victim or people there. And then we have another, group of people of concern, the next of
correct.
kin and also the family members. What is your opinion about providing a structured mental health support? How do we have this in place? And at certain points, we may need long-term psychological needs. And how far organizations are going to do this? Your
Yeah,
comments,
indeed.
Doctor. Yeah.
Indeed. So thank you. This again, an amazing question. Now, um, before I go to the mental health, as a baseline, the business continuity plan needs to also outline um, what, when, and how HR inform the families, right, of situation. Regardless whether the employee is injured or not, when there is a disaster, HR need to have a plan on how to inform the families, because the families needs to know, right, what's happening over there. So then that needs to be done. So assuming that is well planned and done, um, what mental health support do we give to the family on top of that? Do we extend our support for the employees to the families? My experience is that it depends. It depends on the disaster. It depends on the country and the norms of that country. It depends on the regulatory restrictions. I'll just keep it short and just say that in some countries this can be complex. But my approach, what we saw is that where we have the resources and where we can, uh, we should. The caveat is that it needs to be identified and discussed and agreed in our RNA. Remember, we spoke about our rapid needs assessment. And that then, because it should be part of that. It cannot be reactive. And reactive would be wrong. If you say, just, good idea, let's go, talk to the family. It needs to be think through in a rapid needs assessment. And the rapid needs assessment will be able to tell you whether this is a gap or not. So, for example, in Turkey, we did not do this because local situation, and we found that this is not good. We just focus on the employees. Now, on the other hand, we had some other disasters, like in Ukraine. We supported the family. Now we even evacuated the family.
All right.
So it depends.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Halim. I think it is very important to understand that mental well-being support is not something that you're, afterthought. It should be there right from the very beginning. And we must understand that one size doesn't fit all. So it has to be very much, customized according to the country regulations or local sensitivities and whatnot. And also at certain times, it has to be site specific, even within the similar organization, right, Doctor? All right. I think we thank you for patiently taking so many questions today. I think this is we are at the sixth webinar, but this is the most number of questions we had so far because this is a very, very important topic. On behalf of the organizing committee of ACOH 2026, we would like to thank you so much, Dr. Halim. It's morning over there, for your time, for your expertise and sharing with us all your experience and practical approaches in managing in planning and managing disasters. So it is, I hope it benefits all our doctors, occupational health professionals we have from many countries over here. It is truly an enlightening experience and knowledge sharing session for all of us. So ladies and gentlemen, don't go away. Dr. Halim, you too, please stay on. Allow me a few minutes to quickly promote ACOH before we gather. We are going to switch on the cameras today. So all of you, please be prepared. We are going to have a photo session at the end of this webinar. All right. So a quick promotion. We are going to have our Asian Congress on Occupational Health, ACOH 2026, in Borneo Convention Center, Kuching, between 5th to 8th August. So it's less than a year. Start planning. And it is going to be such a wonderful experience. All you have to do is you can start registering your interest at our website, ACOH 2026. So if you Google, just type in ACOH 2026. It will bring you to our website. As you can see here, register your interest channel is already open. The full registration will be open soon as we are in midst of finalizing certain scientific program details and also the fee details. Next one, please.
On behalf of Sarawak government, I would like to support Academy of Occupational and Environmental Medicine Malaysia in bidding for 24th ASEAN Congress of Occupational Health 2026 in Kuching. Recently, I had the honor and the pleasure to announce that Sarawak won the bid for 24th ASEAN Congress of Occupational Health to be held in Kuching in August next year. This is the second time Malaysia ever hosts it, and the last one is 29 years ago. This is possible because of the collaboration between AOEMA, the Academy of Occupational and Environmental Medicines, as well as Business Events Sarawak to win the bid. I am so happy that my small short videos helped to win the bid. This conference will bring in more than 2,000 experts and professionals from the ASEAN regions. The economic impact of ACOH 2026 is valued at 16.4 million. Not surprising, because with 2,000 delegates, it will occupy more than 8,500 hotel rooms in Kuching. Currently, Sarawak attracts more than 45,000 conference delegates a year. About 60 to 70% of these conferences are medical. Conference tourism and medical tourism is emerging to be quite a substantial economic impact, not only for Kuching but for Miri and Sibu. If you like my updates, please follow my social medias and jangan tengok saja.
Alright, jangan tengok saja. That was our Yang Berhormat Dato' Amal Dr. Sim Hui Kian, Deputy Premier of Sarawak, who has been supporting us all the way, right from the moment we bid for the conference to come back to Malaysia after 29 years. So we really hope to see everyone in Sarawak in August 2026. And in preparation and also as part of our promotional activities, we have lined up a series of webinars, not only for this year, there'll be more coming up next year, but until December, as you can see on the screen, this is the list of our upcoming webinars. If you can go to the next one, please. You can start registering on our ACOH website. All you have to do is click on the register your interest. You can register for the conference, for the webinar. The webinar is complimentary. It's free of charge. And the next one is going to be on the 16th of October by none other than Dr. Nadia Mohamed, all the way from National Institute of Health Malaysia and the Ministry of Health Malaysia. She'll be coming up with a paper on work environment, impact on workers' health and safety. Next one, please. So if you'd like to watch our webinars, our previous webinars, if you can move to the next slide. Shakira. If we can move to the next slide, please.
Hold on, yeah. Hold on, yeah. There's a little bit lagging at here.
Okay, allow me to
All right,
okay. So that we can have a smooth sailing session for the next 1 hour. I'd like to request the cooperation of all the participants. I can hear my voice, but I know I'm not the one speaking. Yeah. All right. Okay, I'm in view of time, Shakira, maybe I can just mention over here. If you would like to view our previous webinars, all you have to do also go to our website, just click on the icon button that states webinar, and you can view our previous webinars through the YouTube link. All you have to do is just click over there. All right. Sherry, are we good to have the group photo?
Okay, let me give you.
Okay, Shakira is back on track. Sorry for the technical glitch. They are right now at Setia Alam, National Institute of Health. There's an event going on there. Okay, so this is where you can take a picture. You can scan your interest to register. It will bring you directly to the website. You can slow down the volume a bit, Shakira. Okay, can we go for the group photo? The first one ever for this, our 6th webinar, but this is our first group photo. Dr. Halim, are you still there?
I'm here.
All right. Yes. So everyone, whoever there, can please switch on the camera. Shakira, give us the cue. Yeah. I can see you. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let's start there. In count of 1, 2, 3. Everyone smile. All right, great. Okay, another one. I want everyone to say echo. Okay, in count of 1, 2, 3. Echo.
Echo. How
right,
does the
thank you.
picture come out, Shakira? Are we not supposed to be seated on some seats and all that? Does it come out like that?
Good, Dr. Jasmine. It's
Okay, okay.
by the
All right, so we can maybe share it on the chat over here, but we will be also be posting on our website. So you can go to the media section and you'll be able to view the pictures. So ladies and gentlemen, it was indeed a great afternoon that we had today, or also a great day, I would say, with Dr. Halim. Who shared with us wonderful information on disaster planning and response. And we hope to meet all of you in the coming webinars and also in ACO 2026. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much to Dr. Halim. If all of us, can take this opportunity to show our appreciation to Dr. Halim through a virtual applause or perhaps a heart. Thank you
Thank you,
and see
everyone.
you
It's really
all.
nice being with you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Halim. It was our pleasure to host you today.
Dr.
All right.
Jasima,
Yeah.
Shakira, Dr. Abid, thank you. Have a nice
Yeah.
afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abid. Are you still there? Yeah.